Hi Copic fans, welcome back to Copic in the Craft Room. Today we're going to continue our series on mixed media techniques with Copic inks. I'm going to be using both some sketch markers and my re-inkers today, the same three colors as I did last time, but we'll try some new techniques. We're going to be dripping ink and coloring with ink and just making a mess again. We're continuing on the pages that we started, so if you haven't seen the first video, you might want to go back and look. But again, all of these techniques are standalone techniques as well that you can use to create card backgrounds, to create other pieces of crafting projects. So bring what you've started or just bring some fun stuff. Take a look at the video and see if you'd like to play along. Well, we have shifted over to my table that I usually do my videoing at. It has pretty good natural light. I've got my table space covered fairly effectively so that I'm not getting my ink all over my work surface. I know I could clean it up, but especially if you're working on wood, you want to keep all of that safe. And I'm starting with some second pieces or second phases of my mixed media album. This is that acrylic page. You can see we added some tinted gesso on one side, and so the other side still is very shiny and slick. I'm going to continue working on the one side. And today, all I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and add some drips of color. The three colors we started with are the three I'm going to continue with today, with a few bonuses for one of mine, just with some markers. So I'm going to start with my V04, which is one of my colors, and I'm literally, all I'm doing is dripping on that surface. One or two drops, kind of strategically placed possibly, but it's on, because it's on a very slick surface, this would work on photo paper the same, a clear transparency the same, it's going to have the same effect. This ink is going to spread like crazy. The other thing you can see on the video is where it is sitting on top of that gesso. It is eating into that gesso a little bit. Remember, a gesso is a water-based medium, and so it will re-wet that, and it's going to change the look of that. I'm going to use all three colors. This was my R83. My V17 is my last color. It's my darkest. And I'm going to let those continue spreading. Each one, the V17, obviously much thicker, much denser. As this spreads, I'm going to come back and show you the back of this and how that shows through on the other side, because it'll show through on all of those areas without doing anything else. And we can decide if we need a few more drips. The other thing that I'm going to add drips to today is a piece of vellum, or you could also use tracing paper if you don't have any vellum. And same thing, I'm going to add drips of color to this one as well. This time I'm starting with my dark just for fun, spreading them about. Again, a smoother surface, so these are going to bleed quite a bit. If I want to encourage this to bleed further, I could mist it with colorless blender. I can also tip the paper. There's some places where the ink is fairly heavy and I would get some drip marks. Actually, I might try that today. So I'm going to shift all of this one direction. And I'll stop there before it runs off the page, but I got some awesome effects. I am going to set this one also to the side. Anything that's slick like this, that's not that porous surface, is going to take longer to dry. So I do have to set it aside and come back to it. This is going to be used as a layer on top. So I can set this aside. It's exactly how I want it. And as it dries, it's going to change a little bit. We'll come back and see it later. And it might be our next video that you actually see it dry, but that'll give you, but you'll get to see it again. I think this is dry enough though that I can flip it over and you can see what's happened. Where the drips happened on the clear portion of the acetate, obviously we can see through perfectly, but even in these areas where the gesso is, it bleeds through the gesso and you can see it. I actually want a lot more of those drips happening over in this gesso area, so I'm gonna add some more and then move on to our next technique. The next piece is working on something we started again in our first video. I took some old book pages and I dyed them using my Copic various inks, and I did them in a variety of ways on my surface. I tore up those pieces of paper into small bits and pieces. They looked just like this. And then I decoupaged or collaged them onto these boards. And these are actually ones that have the gesso on one side, and it's just the plain tinted gesso. And then on the other side, they were still blank. And so I filled them all the way to the edges with this dyed paper that's all torn up. The decoupage, or the glue piece that I used, is this collage page. It has a glossy finish. It is really messy on your hand, so if you're a person who doesn't want to get messy, I would highly recommend gloves or using a foam brush that you can just throw away. I did use it as the adhering, and then also to kind of coat it on top, so all those edges, you can kind of hear it as I run my thumb. It's nice and smooth. So what I'm going to do is actually add another layer on top of this, and I'm going to add some doodling. So I literally am going to go right over the top of this. Now, that decoupage medium, again, is a water-based medium. So the rule has always been that you don't do anything underneath your Copic markers because it will ruin the tips. Well, if I didn't take care of my tips, yes, it could ruin my tips. But I am going to scrub off in between some of my doodling so that I know that decoupage isn't gumming up the tips of my markers. And if for some reason it does happen, I'm just going to replace the tip. So I'm going to put my scratch paper really close at hand, and I'm going to start working. This is the one time I'm going to bring some other colors in. And what I did is I grabbed a darker violet. I've got V09. I've got two complementary colors, or ones that are kind of going across the color wheel a bit. Some blue greens. I've got a BG57 and a BG18, and then I've got a V99, so way dark. I think I'm gonna start with that one. And I like to doodle with my sketch markers. I do use the brush tip just with some light strokes. And there's no rhyme right or wrong here. I'm gonna put some frame, maybe fill in some doodles. I'll close in just a little bit and speed it up so you can see what I'm doing as I play. So there's one of my boards. I've got the layering underneath with the Copic collaged paper. That's what this looked like. And then I've added doodles on top of it. Again, it's more about breaking up space than anything, just creating some design and pattern on top. I experimented a little bit with the BG colors, and they really weren't showing up very well, at least from my perspective. You can see them up here in this corner. So I might go back in and add small amounts in just to balance that out in these corners, in those scalloped areas. I'm gonna add some doodles onto this page as well, but I won't run you through that because we have a little more to do for this particular week. We're actually gonna do some doodling, and we're gonna do it on foil as well. That will become another layer. This is plain old run-of-the-mill aluminum foil that is straight out of my kitchen, and I am going to doodle on a few of these just to kind of create some interest. So I have a little group of foil that I've colored on. I did 2 different techniques. I used a lighter color as a base and colored the darker color on top. So I was using my BG57 and BG18 as those base colors. And then I was using the V99 and V09 on top of them. And then I reversed it. I actually put the V99 down first, and then came back in with those blue greens, blue green 57 in this case, and actually drew in to that with the BG57. Now you can see it, it's very faint. You can see the BG57, but more than anything, the marker was picking up that V99 and removing it from the space. It was actually picking up, and that's why I kept scribbling over on my scratch paper, is because I was actually picking up ink. So I was scribbling it off as I went, but that is another way to do that. Again, I'm just getting textures and pieces that then I can add back into my book. But how cool would this be for a fun, funky background on a card or craft project? These would be really cool. Again, something you have in your house. All of us, or most of us, would have in our house. So we could experiment with doodling with our Copic markers. You can use every color you own, depending on what surface you're working on. You're gonna have different effects, different amounts of bleeding. We did it today on our foil, and we also did it on our collaged bookends. And that's with that dyed book paper. We did some dripping, and we did that on our clear acetate that had some gesso on it. You can see how that bled through. Remember, I didn't do any dripping on this side. So it shows through in those clear areas, but it also bleeds through that gesso and creates some really awesome effects on the second side. We also did some dripping on a piece of tracing paper, and that is just about dry as well. Again, a transparent layer that will build up some things in our book, and I'll tear these down further, the foil and this as well, and these will go on upper layers, but it had some neat effects with that dripping. You can see how, again, this would work as a really amazing card background. You can do this same technique on a clear transparency. You can also do it on photo paper. Will work really well. If you drip and while it's still wet or pooling, you kind of shift that paper. And this, for the most part, is dry. And I haven't time-lapsed this video. It's the video that you're seeing. Obviously, I've sped some up, but so dripping, sketching. Next time we're going to take a look at some fabric and keep building up the layers in our book. So make sure to check back in and join me again for some mixed media techniques with our Copic inks.